Aatrox is a champion that I have always hated. His healing is unfair, his Q range is unfair. Come to think of it, everything about this champion's just unfair. But maybe it's all in my head. Maybe, just maybe, there's more to Aatrox than I'm giving credit for. So for the next 10 hours, I'm gonna try to learn Aatrox in 3 steps. First, normal games, second, do some research, and third, play some ranked games. I'm doing this because I'm trying to learn every champion, so one day, I can make the greatest Viego video ever. So what runes and build should you go on Aatrox? Well, your main rune is Conqueror like 90% of the time. You're constantly using abilities on a low cooldown and auto attacks which stack it up very quickly. However, you can also go Electrocute against squishy enemy team comps, or Arcane Comet if you're against a hard matchup and you just want to poke. For your build, your main option is Bruiser. You want to build something like Sundered Sky first for even more healing, Spear of Shojin for the ability haste and damage, and then Voltaic Cyclo Sword, Steric's Gauge, Sherilda's Grudge, and Death's Dance for damage and survivability. Now I know what you're thinking. Where's Lethality Aatrox? Well, after looking at over 200 challenger builds in the last month and various League of Legends statistics, Lethality Aatrox has about a 5% play rate with a below average win rate. If you want to go Lethality, I'll throw some items that are popular on screen now, but again, the build isn't very good and should only be used if you're a good Aatrox player. And with that, on to some normal games. So pretty much immediately, my original hypothesis of Aatrox being an easy, no-skill champion was put to the test. I told you I was gonna die! Okay, maybe not immediately. I mean, I did pull off this sick outplay in my first game.
No, we're the best.
But I quickly realized I was not, in fact, the best. I discovered Aatrox is totally reliant on spacing, keeping the enemy at the perfect distance to lane empowered Qs, and knowing if the enemy closes the gap, I'm probably gonna die. So after getting 3 kills because my tower's the real MVP,
Fuck me, I'm so bad. I could've just autoed him.
I was unable to get a single on my own kill because I just didn't know how to space with Aatrox yet, only landing 1 empowered Q in this entire fight right here. Funnily enough, when I played against a ranged top laner like Teemo, my issues of spacing weren't really a problem because he also wanted to keep his distance. The difference is, once Aatrox lands a few Qs and gets you low, he has the ability to go into melee range and finish off an enemy champion, while Teemo doesn't as much. But again, once I started playing against champions with mobility, I struggled to land my Q, and it felt like I was hitting the enemy with a pool noodle or something. This champion was just so much effort to play, to the point where even a normal kill like this felt like a genuine accomplishment.
Holy shit, I did it! No, redemption?
And to be honest, I think the start of the challenge would have been way worse if my turrets hadn't saved my butt so many times. Like, the only reason I was winning fights right now was because I had a lead that I didn't really deserve. Watching these replays back, it's wild how bad I was at landing my Qs. Even past Ecor knew how bad these Qs were.
I shouldn't have E'd.
Things only got harder during fights too. I had to choose what target to go for. I had to dodge CC, all while still spacing correctly. These first few hours were genuinely a humbling experience as I learned this champion's pretty hard to perform well on. And I'm not the only one who thinks this either. One of the best players in North America, Pobelter, had this to say about Aatrox.
Aatrox is so fun when you can hit all your Qs. This champ is so much work to play. Holy fuck.
But man, when you actually land those sweet spots with your Q, you do so much damage. I only had 2 items here, and my 3rd Q did 800 damage to Heimerdinger. I just can't do it consistently yet. But with every game, every click of the mouse, I knew I was improving, leading to a game where I genuinely thought I played pretty well. But as my confidence grew, I did notice a handful of mistakes that I was constantly making, and addressing some of those mistakes is why I started playing better. First, I was playing Aatrox way too aggressively in the first few levels. His Q is great poke, but its cooldown is actually really long at early levels. Aatrox becomes a champion at about level 5 with 3 points in his Q, because then his cooldown is way shorter. Second, I was playing Aatrox like a melee champion when I should have been playing him like a ranged champion. Because spacing is so important, you usually want to keep your distance and only enter melee range when you want to go for a kill or you use your ult or something. Third, I could not figure out how to teamfight with this champion. I was trying to take fights head on and people were just running away, so I should probably focus more on flanking. And spoiler alert, this issue took a lot longer to solve than all the other ones. And fourth, just learning how to ult. Sometimes you want to ult for movement speed and run away. Sometimes you want to use it to chase. Sometimes you want to use it after you land your W because you know you're going to go for an all-in. It just comes with knowing Aatrox's limits, which I did not know yet. All that being said, I was making a lot of improvements, even if I was still making the occasional mistake. And honestly, I was finally having a good game, which gave me some much needed confidence. Because right now, I was struggling.
Dude, I can't do anything!
Going into this hour, I had all the confidence in the world, and my tower was still coming in clutch, but I wasn't progressing as well as I usually do. I was still mistiming my Qs, forgetting to ult sometimes, and basically just getting hard outplayed by the enemy top laner. I did have a few more moments where I spaced my Qs correctly, and I was starting to pull off some pretty clean plays, like comboing my E and flash to land this Q here, but I just had so many fundamental issues still, especially when it came to fighting. Not keeping track of enemy CC, not focusing correctly with my abilities, and not remembering what number Q I was on. Flashing at the end of this fight thinking it was my third Q, when in reality it had reset and it was my first Q again. I was laning better though, because it was just me, my opponent, and focusing super hard on landing all my Qs consistently. And honestly, I think my laning phase was pretty good at this point in the challenge, winning lane in 2 of my last 3 games and pulling off 1v2 plays like this by landing all my Qs. And it wasn't just a one-time thing either. In the past, I may have won a lucky fight occasionally, but I was actually winning these 1v1s and 1v2s consistently, as long as it was still during the laning phase. Because I still didn't quite understand his identity outside of lane. I still struggled trying to flank with him in team fights. And I struggled to side lane with him because he isn't that great of a duelist. Even champions that aren't duelists are hard for Aatrox to fight sometimes if they have mobility to dodge your Qs. But after a frustrating game, I would jump right back in and dominate my laning phase again. All the potential was there. I could feel it. I just had to somehow translate my skills in lane to skills during team fights and split pushing. Like, watch me flawlessly combo this gangplank in lane and kill him from 100 to 0. Literally landing every ability perfectly. Until the end of the fight where I panic and flash, but that's not important. But because of my previous issues, I'd be so scared to team fight with Aatrox that I'd resort to these stupid split pushes. These silly 1v2s that, sure, sometimes worked out, but more times than not ended in a death or just not being able to help my team in a team fight where I should have been there. If I could just take a deep breath, relax, and remember that the talent was there, I could succeed. But if my previous failures scared me from taking risks and trying to improve, I would keep losing. After these games, I realized Aatrox is a lot of work. So I did some research on YouTube and here's what I found. 1. Don't use your third Q in lane unless you know you can get the damage or you need to clear a wave. If you don't use your third Q, it reduces the cooldown of your Q by a few seconds, which means you can poke them with your Q1 and Q2 sooner. 2. Try to auto attack as much as you can. Basically, every time you use an ability, try to get an auto attack in without putting yourself in too much danger, because your passive auto heals you a lot. When it's up, it helps you stack Conqueror faster, and when you have Sundered Sky, it's even more healing, like 1k HP sometimes. 3. You want to ult early in fights. In my last challenge, I played Dr. Mundo, who wants to ult late in fights to maximize healing. However, Aatrox wants to ult early to maximize damage, healing, movement speed, and get more resets. 4. Your most reliable combo is as follows. Start with landing your first Q. Sometimes you need to use your E and sometimes you can surprise them from a bush or something. If you land your first Q, your W is then guaranteed. Then you want to either walk forward to land your second Q or use your E if you saved it during the first part of the combo. And that should stall your opponent just long enough to get pulled back to the center, where you'll be waiting to land your third Q for tons of damage. 5. When you use your Q, you can also use your E to reposition and land your sweet spot, but that doesn't mean every EQ combo is created equally. To set up combos, use your E with your first Q. It's your main combo starter, so landing it is usually pretty important. In lane, when you want to poke, use your E with your second Q because it still has good range, does 25% more damage than your first Q, and it's bigger so it's easier to land. And you want to use your E with your third Q if you're already in melee range, but if the enemy is far away, it's usually better to just not use your third Q, like I said in tip 2. And with that, on to some ranked games. So finally, after doing all that research, things really started to come together, seamlessly using fundamentals like level up timers with my Aatrox skills. I mean, after watching several Aatrox videos and streams, I just had a better idea of what I was supposed to do on this champion. Like, take this 1v2 for example. I definitely didn't play it perfectly, but I actually played way better than I expected, landing most of my Qs, weaving in auto attacks for my passive and Sundered Skies healing, and even though I died, I surprised myself with my gameplay. If I didn't accidentally miss this Q3, I might have killed both of them here. And thanks to all that improvement, I finally won a pretty good game, in ranked no less. Despite the improvement though, I wasn't quite where I wanted to be with Aatrox yet. All the pieces were starting to fall into place, but I felt like there was still one piece I was missing. I mean, even my biggest weakness, Aatrox's team fighting, was starting to improve and I was saving fights that seemed doomed. But I still felt like most of these fights were going badly and I don't think it was my fault. I dove the enemy Aphelios to get an ult reset, survived a super long time with my healing, and did a good amount of damage with my AoE abilities, almost killing 2 other people. But even with all that improvement and actually fighting pretty well now, I was still losing fights because I was missing something. I was so close and so determined to figure out what it was. Sadly, I wasn't gonna figure it out in my next game though. This was just a good old-fashioned butt kicking. I played too aggressive early game, was punished for it with ganks, and just wasn't really able to play the game. I had one good flank, but messed it up by spacing my second Q incorrectly, and that was pretty much all I did this game. But you know, these games happen from time to time, so it's not the worst thing in the world. Somehow though, despite coming off of my worst game in a while, everything just snapped into place. Out of nowhere, I had my best game of the whole challenge and started doing everything right. I was using my Qs perfectly to dominate the side lane and create pressure on the map, and even had my first amazing team fight, finding an opening to land a huge 2-person Q on the enemy Lee Sin and Ashe, following up with an ult reset, and then landing a perfect W on Camille who overextended. Just like that, my confidence was at an all-time high, and I was locked the heck in. I was playing around Aatrox's strengths better in skirmishes to clean up kill after kill. I was comboing consistently and cleanly in lane, absolutely dominating one of Aatrox's hardest matchups, Singed. And once again, I was showing up for teamfights, keeping track of my Qs better, using my mobility to land my other abilities, ulting at just the right time to make the most out of my mobility and damage, and finally winning teamfights. I was feeling on top of the world with how well I was playing now. I had gotten over my fear of teamfighting, and even though my spacing wasn't perfect, landing clutch Qs to chunk enemies and set up tons of kills for my team, all building to my best game in the last 7 hours of Aatrox, dominating my lane to a level I had never dominated before, even if my auto attack range was a little bit weird in this clip.
Dude, what is my auto attack range, by the way? I'm a fucking massive guy with wings.
Literally, just denying her access to her own lane by diving her under tower before she could hit level 6, and literally spacing fights perfectly and understanding how strong Aatrox can be if you know what you're doing.
Look at that spacing though!
Which made what happened next so disappointing. The next morning, I woke up super sick. I had a massive headache, my throat hurts, and I just didn't have a lot of energy. And as soon as I got ganked here, I knew I was gonna struggle today. But that's when something weird happened. I started playing well. Sure, I may have been less entertaining on stream, but without trying to be entertaining on camera, I was playing at the diamond level I was used to. I accessed 100% of my total brain power, and I was going into fights so much more relaxed, seamlessly changing from target to target, landing almost every Q and having 9 CS per minute. Even the enemy knew they stood no chance. This was also the least amount of deaths I'd had in the game so far. Champions that would have given me a hard time because of their incredible mobility just weren't anymore. So despite feeling awful inside, I was playing amazing on the outside. I felt like I was gliding across the battlefield without a single thing that could stop me. You could probably break down some of my gameplay, like target selection, a few missed Qs, and a little overconfidence, but overall, Aatrox was just feeling so natural to me now. Going into the last hour, my goal was to win every single game. I mean, usually my goal is to win every game, but it was more important now than ever. After struggling for so long with Aatrox, nothing would be more satisfying than me winning all of my last games to cement my legacy as a true Aatrox player. I don't know if you can tell, but this is one of the challenges I have been most proud of because of how far I'd come. I finally understood now that Aatrox is not as easy as I originally thought he was. At the end of the day, playing Aatrox was a truly humbling experience, and I learned a lot about the champion as a whole. Not only is he deceptively hard mechanically, but he requires a lot of brain power to play, which is why you need his abilities to feel natural. It's like when Goku trained in Super Saiyan form until he could use it effortlessly. That way, he could conserve as much power as possible to use during his fight against Cell. This is the exact same concept. If you know all of Aatrox's abilities and ranges and combos without even thinking, you can play him effortlessly. Then you can focus on smaller micro adjustments in fights. You will still make some mistakes and bite off a little more than you can chew sometimes, but that's just how the cookie crumbles. Other times, you'll immediately know if you can win a fight, teleport in, and be the X factor needed to win a game, even if you miss everyone. Aatrox was harder than I thought he would be, but also a lot more fun. Oh yeah, I stream most days on Twitch and YouTube, so feel free to follow on Twitch or like, comment, and subscribe here on YouTube.